And much like WCW in its dying days, this promotion goes out with a whimper. I'm John Rant with the Retro Review of World Wrestling All-Stars, The Reckoning, the final pay-per-view in the very, very brief existence that was the World Wrestling All-Stars that started in October 2001 and ended with this pay-per-view. Andrew McManus had decided, hey, I'm a concert promoter, I'll put some money behind this, let's have a touring thing, let's do this, let's do UK pay-per-views, let's do Aussie pay-per-views, let's have this end in New Zealand, let's even do a US pay-per-view, and then let's show that we really can't deliver on the promise of having a really, really great wrestling promotion because we have no goddamn idea what we're doing. Oh, wait, that's just the creative minds, whoever the fucking creative minds were behind this abomination of a company, in all honesty. They did a few things right, and most of it was a titanic disaster. The production values were shit. Some of the matches were good, and a lot of the matches just were overly long, filled with a lot of nonsense. Way too many midget matches on the big shows for my liking, and they only had one midget match per show, but oh boy, the World Wrestling All-Stars, we hardly knew ye. But anyway, let me know your thoughts on this show in the comments, please. This was the first wrestling pay-per-view in New Zealand. And boy, that crowd was fired up. About 3,000 people to capacity in the, I believe it was the North Shore Event Center, as I wrote down. Since they were in Auckland, New Zealand, very, very fired up crowd. The capacity was like 4,200, so with the staging and everything, actually 3,000 was pretty close to a sellout. The Tamatoa Warriors did the talk. I don't remember the name of the native dance that they do, the war dance. Very inspiring, very frightening. I certainly would not want to piss these men off. I would not want to piss off anybody that is willing to have that dedication and that, just that toughness. Like, that is some real dedication to their native ancestry, and it's really, really inspiring stuff. And they do that, and that gets a pretty good reaction. And then we get recaps of the events from the Retribution pay-per-view on in December 2002. Sting won the WWA Championship from Lex Luger in Switzerland. So they did tour, and they had some pretty good crowds, but it wasn't sustainable. They couldn't sustain, like, having, on just like 3,000 or 4,000 people for their pay-per-views, and maybe even large crowds for their live events because of all the travel and the production, costs of like shipping and stuff, and also bringing the wrestlers in. If they had stuck to Australia, New Zealand, and stuff like that, and done maybe the occasional UK show, it wouldn't have been the worst thing in the world, but it seemed like a doomed venture. Like, it seemed doomed to fail, even though it was bold, and it gave some people some opportunities, and again, a couple of the matches on the shows weren't all that bad. You look at these pay-per-views just in a vacuum, they're fucking disasters. They're just absolutely fucking disasters. Anyways, since McManus had decided that he was going to shut the promotion down, he's like, okay, that's it. No, stop. Ole Anderson, stop. Don't do this anymore. They were going to unify the championships on this night. They were going to unify NWA, TNA, and WWA titles, and just do that, which sort of made sense, because if you're going to shut the promotion down, why not try to make the most of it? So, Borash and Disco on commentary. Yeah, this commentary was ass. It's pretty goddamn bad when Disco Inferno, is the go-to guy for wrestling commentary, because he's fucking terrible. So, Mark Mercedes, whoever he is, he's an Aussie, Aussie talent. I'm not really that familiar with him, not knocking him. He knocks New Zealand because they don't like each other. The Kiwis and the Aussies, I believe as some people may call them, don't like each other. My understanding, I don't really know that much about the whole Australia-New Zealand thing. Though, I can imagine there's probably some deep-seated hatred maybe from how Australia was colonized. If you know, you know. So, Rick Steiner took on Mark Mercedes in a match that was pretty quick. Mark got in a few shots, but fell to a diving bulldog from Rick Steiner, 1, 2, 3. Rick Steiner was pretty goddamn over. A bit later, the lights go out. Sting is in the rafters. Stazinger is in the house, an actual line from a guy that was approaching 50 at this point. Wait, no, that's not true. He was actually only just above 40. Because now he's 62, with spinal stenosis, still doing big things in AEW. Big things that he probably shouldn't be doing since he's at AARP status. So, Tio, Meatball, and Puppet the Psycho Dwarf, a midget three-way for goddamn, seriously? Nothing against midget wrestling, but goddamn, seriously? Same as it ever was, and there were promos between a couple of the midgets before. And then this Tio guy wins. It wasn't nearly as sure as it needed to be, if you'll see what I did there. So, Johnny Swinger and Frankie the Future Kazarian do pre-tapes about tonight's four-way. And then Devon Storm, a.k.a. Crowbar, took on Conan in a hardcore match. Okay, look, the crowd was into it, and Devon Storm is talented. Conan's talented, though at this point Conan was just a couple years away from needing to have hip surgery and pretty much retiring full-time from wrestling. This is not good. There were guardrail spots. There was, a rail bump at one point. There was a bunch of other stuff. It was just same hardcore stuff that you would see. Sure, these guys hit each other pretty goddamn hard, but just what was the point for this? What was the point to this? Like, Devon Storm actually is a hell of a worker. It's a shame he got pigeonholed in the hardcore stuff. We get a crossbody on the rail, 1, 2, 3. There wasn't a lot to this show until we get to the next match. But Saban is kind of heel promo and everything. Chris Saban, tremendous talent, talks about how, Jerry Lynn's too old and that he's going to retain here and that Lynn says that he will be the unified champion. Then Johnny Swinger, Frankie the Future Kazarian, Jerry Lynn, who was the WWA Cruiserweight champion, and Chris Saban, who was the NWA TNA X Division champion, would have a unification match. This is the best match on the show, even though there was really no goddamn psychology to it at all. It was just a car crash with all four of these guys working really goddamn hard. Swinger, you might have thought, might have seemed out of place. Actually, quite the opposite. Swinger hung just fine here. Easily the best on the show. One of the best matches of 2003. This is a gem. This is a goddamn gem in this cow pie of a show. And they do a lot of stuff that isn't the most technically sound, even though we do get a figure four spot at one point, but there was definitely a lot of flippy shit with some good action. We get a leg drop splash combo that breaks up the figure four. We get submission, trades and stuff like that just end with, them all clustered together. And then a future shock, 1, 2, 3. This is after every move in existence was hit in about a 14.5-minute match that was very, very good. It sounds like I'm dumping on it. Actually, this match was the best thing on the show and very enjoyable. So I would say, if nothing more, if you don't watch anything else on the show, this is worth watching. It's X Division, WCW Cruiserweight action, whatever. It's really, really good stuff. So here's Shane Douglas. For some goddamn reason, I guess he had been on like an Australian show or something like that, and that was just before the pay-per-view. But he had the cast on his arm because Shane Douglas was always perpetually injured and also a conspiracy nut. And a goddamn ridiculous, overly swearing guy because he didn't have any goddamn other talent other than swearing in his fucking promos. Calls Vince a piece of shit, turning wrestling into a cartoon bullshit thing. He went to ECW, Okay, cool. He's doing the same thing that he's been doing for the past, almost 10 years at this point. Actually, about the last 8 or 9. And then, it would have been about 10 years. Because he left WCW sometime around May or June of 1993. Because I know he teamed up with Steamboat. But I don't think he, I think he might have been gone by about May of 1993. And then he was in ECW and all that. He knocks New Zealand, and this took forever. This took a long time. He was told to go out there and kill a bunch of time. Joey Legend shows up, and he mentions how he's going to take down Sabu and choke him out with that dish rag on his head. That was an actual thing that he said. And they wet him to death. Because it's supposed to be Shane Douglas versus Sabu in 2003, which is not a match anybody wanted to see, even in 93, to be honest. Joey Legend says, I'll take your place. All this was done to eat up 11 minutes on a pay-per-view. This was abysmal. And nothing, Joey Legend, a.k.a. Just Joe in WWE. Shane is a fine worker, but he's better in tag teams. He was fine in ECW because he was a big fish in a small pond. Once he came back to WCW, he wasn't the performer that he was. And let's be honest, his time in NWA TNA, he was not very fucking good. He threw up in the goddamn ring against Raven in that hair versus hair match. Because he was pilled out of his goddamn mind. Because he was a drunk. Whatever. Hopefully he got that stuff straightened out. But just, you shouldn't go into a goddamn ring when you're in that kind of condition. And then he joins commentary for Sabu versus Joey Legend. And a match that was listed as a standard singles match, but was actually, basically a hardcore match. Because chairs, tables, and other stuff got brought out. And a match that went 17 pissing minutes. This seems like a recurring thing with all the Sabu matches that he had on WWA programming. 17 minutes for a guy that really shouldn't have been out there for more than 10 at this point. And he hits the Arabian Facebuster 1, 2, 3. It took too long. It wasn't very good. Shane and Disco were abysmal on commentary. And then Shane attacks and blindsides Sabu with the cast. And then that was probably about 35 minutes of pay-per-view action. Or of pay-per-view, programming. With the promo, the match, and then the post-match beatdown. Fucking stupid. Here's Andrew McManus, owner of the company. He introduces Bret Hart, who's back after, having a debilitating stroke. And it was nice that they gave him a hometown pop, or not hometown, because he's not from New Zealand. It was nice that they gave him a homecoming, so to speak, a welcome. They were happy to see Bret. And he was happy to be in New Zealand for the first time, not wrestling, but, appearing. And they were giving him a lot of love. He gave it back. He was very emotional, referring to how the day before was the 4-year anniversary of the death of his brother Owen. Loud Owen chants. Good stuff. How Owen would be proud of him. And then British Bulldog, Mr. Perfect, Liz were all lost within the past year. And in fact, this was May 25th of 2003. This was a few weeks after Liz had passed away. Thank you, Lex Luger, you piece of shit. Karma got you, didn't it, you jackass? And he thanks fans again and everything. He didn't want to take up too much time, but it meant a lot to him. And this was fine. This was a fine promo to eat up time, or, not even kill time, but stretch things out. Because at least Bret Hart, his words meant something. Shane Douglas just shouted, let it all outed. Anyway, Sting was the WWA Unified Champion, taking on Jarrett, who was the NWA champion. Unification match, big entrances, and then the bell rang. Disco yelled at them, "This is my workspace," when they're bashing each other off the announcer's table. They should have bashed Disco in the head repeatedly. Not that it would have hurt anything, because he doesn't have a working brain at least. And then later, hey, look, we get the guitar bat spot, where he stops the guitar with the bat. Badly done, by the way. Ref bump. Joey Legend and Rick Steiner run in. Rick's on Sting's side. Oh, wait, no, he's not. He hits Sting with a guitar while Sting has a scorpion on. And then Jarrett covers 1, 2, 3. He's a unified champion. I'm going to tell you right now, I am happy, after getting these done, that I will never have to watch this promotion again. Even though there were a few good moments, this was dog shit. This was besides that 4-way, besides Bret Hart coming out and getting a big, big welcome from New Zealand, this was really, really bad. So anyway, I'm going to do other retro reviews at some point, down the road. I'll probably be doing some Mania retro reviews, here coming up in March, maybe even, at the, the end of this month into March. Just a few of them, which probably means it'll be about 8 or 10 because I can't help myself. And I'll dive into some other territorial stuff and some obscure shows and maybe shows that have been lost to time. But damn, I wanted to get through this stuff. I wanted to get through these 5 pay-per-views because I'm not waiting for the 20th anniversary of this show and waiting till next May. No. So yeah, the WWE ends with a fucking whimper, and it seems appropriate given the state of that company. Anyway, agree, disagree with what I said, like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Retland. I'll see you soon.